Hi, this is Damian O'Doherty with KO Public Affairs. I'm very excited to have a special guest from the Empire State, Gregory Lavine. He's worked for U.S. congresspersons. He's worked for governors, and he got his start working in Senator Joe Biden's Senate office there in Washington, D.C. He is a senior vice president with Mercury Public Affairs in New York. Coming to us live from Strong Island. Gregory, welcome.
Thank you, Damian. I really appreciate your inviting me and follow you, and just got great content.
Hey, thanks so much. Listen, it seems to me that New York City, at least for sure, has never felt an occupation like this since the time of Alexander Hamilton. Was wondering if you could just give those of us in the public affairs community a sense of what you're seeing and how that impacts your community and your family and your business. I think we'd all be very interested. You're on the front lines as far as public affairs is concerned. I'd love to hear your general impressions.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, here in New York, it's hard to stop the city that doesn't sleep. And COVID has done that at least publicly. No means in spirit. You can see that with the claps every day and the appreciation people have for our first responders. But I can just from my own personal experience, from going a million miles an hour in New York, especially doing a lot of work in Queens. Being on the subway, being in the city, the timing between going so fast and slowing down, you even feel it further in New York. And it is quiet here, but it's vigilant. New York City is bearing the brunt of this. Queens, which is the borough that I've done a lot of work in, spent a lot of time in politically and in public relations, public affairs, really is getting hit hard. There's a lot of reasons, and but they're fighting back. And I'm here on Long Island, as you mentioned, and we're seeing, while New York maybe, we don't know, maybe shifting a little bit in terms of because of the precautions they're taking and the strong work of the governor, but we're starting to feel it here on Long Island more, and that's deeply concerning.
I've never seen a public health scenario so heavily politicized, and that puts our clients in public affairs, yours in greater New York and mine in the DMV, puts them in a very peculiar situation. Your borough is your home borough, in a sense, is the birthplace of the President of the United States, if I got that right. And just wondering how are you managing your clients' experience through that sort of political turbulence, where you have a president of the United States lighting up your home senator, you have a Twitter hashtag of people saying they're homosexuals, that they're, anybody they love your governor so much on Twitter, so how do you as a manager of major institution and organizations, public affairs, try to navigate them towards solutions through that morass?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we're really trying to keep it fact-based here. We're updating our clients twice, 3 times a day, if not more, on numbers, on stats, on the political environment surrounding it. But it is by far, it is a challenge. We think about, and I don't think this is even a comparison. I was actually in Delaware during 9/11. My folks were here. The difference in unity and camaraderie, and obviously a completely different situation. But the polarization in some ways it has even been expanded. I think that our public officials here are doing their best, especially our county leaders. The governor's been tremendous, especially our county leaders here on Long Island and really in Westchester, the county executives, to just be fact-based and work with Democrats and Republicans. We're seeing that a lot even in Suffolk County with the county executive there. So it is challenging, but it's I guess not unexpected based on where we are today in our political world.
So many of our clients, I think, if they're not directly involved, we represent a lot of people in the healthcare industry, a lot of major institutions, some of the like you, some of the first and biggest in the country. But I'm wondering, how do you engage as a public affairs professional in order to help those institutions without sort of forcing yourself upon them? And then the other issue is those ancillary or maybe non-essential businesses that want to help, but they don't know how, and they're asking you to come up with plans and ideas about how to help them sort of scratch their compassionate, caring virtues that they have in their organization and sort of connect all that. What's your advice as a longtime public affairs professional about that delicate balance of engaging during a crisis?
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance for us as well, engaging with clients, that potential clients that come our way that are looking, as you said, looking to get involved. Look, we have a lot of folks that, especially here in New York, that are able to sort of, for lack of a better word, go into the PPE business, whether it be from a donation aspect or for a business aspect, being able to provide these goods and services closer here than getting shipped from far away. And a lot of it is the expectation of that everything is needed and can move so fast, and then really building those expectations in with the client about how you get from A to B. Look, the governor here, the governor here has called upon our existing manufacturing to transfer into this. There's state incentives and state programs. It's all run through the Empire State Development group, and it's really, how do you go from A to B when it just sounds in some ways so easy that you can just transfer what you're doing into making these products. So a lot of it is, again, it's the need, but it's also cutting through red tape. It's accessing the right folks to get the companies right up front and center, and making sure that they're vetted correctly, that they can do the process and the products needed. Here in Long Island, we actually have, little known fact, we have over 3,000 manufacturing companies on Long Island. Now, they're big, small. Some of them are high tech, some of them are not. But it's been something prior to this crisis that I have been working on for a few years now with folks in the manufacturing sector. How do you bring out that there's so much that can be done on Long Island? So there's a lot of work and connections that can be done in those areas. But it's for what is a need-based system, very quickly, and a messy one. You know how messy this is in terms of the strategy and getting everything right. It's really process and getting them through the process to make sure that they can provide these things that they need. And obviously, you have clients that want to do good also, that may have services and goods that they can connect to government, where those needs going to be met the best. And obviously that benefits the greater good, which is the key here, but it's also going to be able to benefit the client and how you're working with the client to stay relevant and make sure you're staying really in the game here. So they're getting what they need.
You know as well as anybody, we both went to the University of Delaware. They're there in the state of Delaware, there is a sort of a Wilmington versus lower Delaware dynamic. In Maryland, we have sort of the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland. Then we have Baltimore versus Washington, big regional differences. You have some of the most pronounced regional differences anybody could imagine, and some of the great political personalities to accentuate those differences sometimes. Does a moment like this give the state of New York more of a sense of cohesiveness, or do you see it sort of balkanizing or fractionalizing the state? What's your take?
I think in spirit from people, there's a sense of unity. I don't know, that the epicenter of this is started obviously in started in Westchester. and it's in the city in Long Island, further on Long Island here. So there's maybe some camaraderie downstate. There was a little bit of a tiff recently. Just the other day, you probably saw it with the governor. I think rightfully so, calling for ventilators to be shipped downstate. That got a lot of folks upstate upset. But we've got to be able to think bigger here. I know that. Look, I know that at least I would hope that here on Long Island we would try to do that for other parts of the state. But it is. It's New York, so it's going to be tough. You mentioned Delaware, where we both went to school, and we're proud Blue Hens. And working in Delaware state government for a long time, there was that old school, the Delaware way, where you had sort of the North and the South divide, but there was a common structure to unite. New York City politics and New York politics are as hard as they get, but there are pathways to connecting them. I think we see some of that, but there's fights, and I think part of that has to do with just how unprepared we were for this, both from a big picture and then personally unprepared. I just even think in my own head, boy, 3 weeks ago, you look at a picture, like what was I doing? So you really, I think that leads to part of this challenge.
You talk about that, your personal experience. I think our affinity online for one another is derived from the fact that we're not just Blue Hens and public affairs operators, but we're also dads. And I'd love to know how you as a dad are balancing, being a senior vice president of one of America's most prestigious public affairs firm and having, a bright young 4-year-old boy that wants to hang out with his dad and learn with his dad. Talk to me about what's going on there.
Yeah. No, I think that's those are the ties that bind, as Springsteen would say. But so I'm sort of anticipating him maybe busting in the room here, a la that video from years ago when the kid busts in the room and the reporter's there. But who knows? He's good on camera. Listen, it's a challenge, but it's I think maybe one of the things, and you can identify with this and know better than I do from being really in this game, is that we work around everything. So we build our families and our kids into our work, and we know how to structure that. So it's been a challenge, and we're playing, and it's don't do your phone, daddy, and it's like, well, just one more text, but nothing, as I say, nothing has prepared me for the political campaign world, or I should say vice versa, for having kids, especially young kids, as doing political campaigns and being in the political campaign world, where time doesn't exist in some ways. And boy, time and the dates don't even exist. The governor, when he does his, or Governor Cuomo does his presentations, and he's doing one now, there's always a slide that says, well, this is the day. Today is Saturday. Today is Sunday. So, we have to fire on all cylinders here. And it can be, there's silver linings, and it's a wonderful time to be there. It's also wonderful to have a little one who just doesn't fully get it. And I appreciate that. And, we'll just keep them safe and keep plugging away. And listen, sometimes I get good ideas from them. So.
Yeah, me too, right? Me too.
But I know you share these experiences. So
talk to me about how your work is adapting. Like I said, we're both about the same age, and I just posted on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people our age that may not be in our business, they're executives. They tend to scroll through, use social media as a surveillance mechanism to see what's going on, and intelligence gathering operation to figure out what their peers and colleagues are doing. Tend to be a little reluctant about offering content. Have you been advising your clients that this is a chance to maybe break out of that a little bit, or any personal experience with your own content management? It's not an easy
Sure.
thing, I'm learning.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's tough. I look to my friends to see what they're doing, which is one thing. I think it's client dependent. I think it's also the culture of the client. I have some clients whose culture is really not to necessarily run that playbook. So they'll run other content that can kind of uh, supplement what they're doing. And then there's clients that we have that, especially political clients, which are fascinating to advise right now in political campaigns. And I have one specific I'm working on here in New York of
I was gonna say, you
how do
can
you
have
do
them. You can have all the political clients. That's got to be a
yeah,
real
thank you.
challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah, talk to me about
it's that is interesting because it's thank you for send them my way. But it's how do you strike the right balance, and how do you engage what was your what was a universe of voters that is now completely with a different mindset, and how do you do it appropriately, and how do you also do it so you're not engage so you're engaging folks correctly, and from a sense from really a public service sense. And that's really what's important right now, because you really have to fully understand the landscape, what folks are going through, how to connect, and how you can connect them, just like other public affairs clients, how you can connect them with what they need at the time. And that's the most important thing, and how you can cut through some of the noise. Personally, on my own experience, especially as you mentioned in social media, finding the content it's interesting. Everybody's posting everything. I mean, I think if you look at the stats that people are looking at their phones now, it's like through the roof. So how do you post stuff that's both interesting and that people will kind of like take a look at you for and say, that's a cut above, or that's not the generic stuff. Challenging.
I'm going to dig into that a little bit. I grew up on television, like a lot of folks our age, and all I ever wanted to do was be do TV ads for a presidential race, and be a James Carville kind of guy. And then over the last couple years, I've been really interested in field and integrating field and social media and audio, podcasts and jingles, and trying to figure out that whole balance. But I got to tell you, with this crisis, it seems like field knocking on doors is a big no-no. And I just wonder where you're telling your clients to sort of re-budget those resources, or do I have that wrong? I'm just interested to hear your thoughts there.
No, you have that. You have that completely correct. In at least in the temporary, and the temporary is not April or May. The temporary could go through the year, and how the national campaigns are going to figure this out will be beyond challenging and fascinating. The lessons learned there. In some ways, digital is the new field. That prior to this crisis, the modern thought was, how do you integrate digital and field together? And you can do that with geo-targeting, geofencing, and you can do that with through different metrics. The door part is out, and as the most effective way to convince someone to support you or your candidate is that old handshake and at the door. We've got to quickly figure out another way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Listen, let me dig a little deeper there, explore a little deeper. So I think one of the magic pieces of field is that back and forth interaction you get, instead of sort of a one-way social media or broadcast television campaign where you're driving your message. The thing about field is cool is you're having a real conversation. You can't escape what the voter's trying to tell you. And that feedback hits the candidate. That feedback hits the consultant. It seems to me what you're saying is maybe we ought to develop some of the engagement culture that we have at the doors, but put that into the digital space. I don't know what that looks like. Is that sort of polling questions daily, or survey type experiences where you're really trying to get feedback from what your message is doing online. You're actually getting real-time feedback about how that message is working, not just sort of A/B, but deeper than that. What are your thoughts?
I think that's the next front, and I think it got thrown on us way faster than we expected. Phones. There's a big debate about phones and doing phone programs, right? Whether it's volunteer or paid, because people aren't picking up their phones or they block their cell phone numbers. So in some ways, I sort of have that. It kind of harks back to talk about it growing up on TV and movies to Back to the Future Part 2, where he's getting that, he's strangely getting fired and he's getting a fax in at the same time. And I'm thinking, well, that may be, hopefully a better conversation comes out of it with a voter, but it may be that we have these engagements online, voter to voter. Everybody's got Zoom, obviously, depending on the universe you're working with. But there's no more of the days where you could say to a universe, well, you have this age of universe and you're going to target this way. Everybody's online in some way. There's Zoom groups going on now with hundreds of people. And if you look at the traction that Facebook Live gets, and I think it's figuring out how you do those one-on-ones. And I'm not the metrics guy necessarily by any means. That's way smarter people do that. But how they break that down into those specifics, and you have to be able to say, look, I'm going for my ones and twos and my persuadables through this messaging. It's a brave new world, and we're in it.
Just closing out with let's say the DMV, your old stomping grounds, and I'm sure you'd be happy to continue to do work there. Is a little bit behind.
Love it.
Is a little bit behind New York as far as the peak of this viral experience. Any advice you have to Marylanders and Delawareans and DC residents, Virginians, about what's to come this week for us and next week for us, and just any sort of closing advice you may have for us?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things about DMV that we're lucky is that we have, we have 3 governors there in those states that are really, really taking this seriously, and I think are looking at the places where the hot spots are. So I think that's some comfort in terms of that. We're not seeing that all around the country, and there's many reasons why, but there's no good reasons. Look, it's quite, if it can be quiet on Fifth Avenue and Madison Avenue and in the Bowery and in my old neighborhoods in the Lower East Side, which were, that's why you're there, for the vibrancy. It's got to be quiet everywhere. And, we've got to do it. I just was, before we came on, reading about New Zealand and their, and some of their successes and how serious they were with going after this, both from distancing and to try to put an end to it. We have a lot to learn from each other. Plenty of blame will go around the politics world, and but we've got to just stay vigilant, because what affects my staying inside here can affect anybody. Look, affect your family in Colorado. The same thing for you. And the thing that I keep thinking about, and keeps going back to me, and maybe this is on a more of a partisan level, but not so much, is that for how long have we heard in the political sphere personal responsibility? And it can be cut a lot of ways. It can be a political tool, and it can be a serious policy tool. Well, this is it. This is the personal responsibility at the end of the day, because this is life and death stuff. And we're really seeing it. We see it up front here in New York, and we'll get through it. But we've got to just we literally got to keep our heads down.
I'm just so grateful you were able to spend some time with us, Gregory, and we're hoping to get this up on LinkedIn and maybe Center Maryland, and hope to see you and your son at the end of this tunnel. I see some light. I see the light in New York, and so I'm a little more hopeful today than I've ever been since this thing started. And just so grateful for you to join me.
Yes. Yeah, I no, and I thank you, and a lot of, and I know the same for you because I follow your music, how you interlude music and lyrics and into the meaning of what you do in life, and I know all the awesome Grateful Dead stuff, but I can kind of my end the song that kind of comes to my mind here, and it's a Long Island guy in Billy Joel, and one of his great songs, Summer Highland Falls, which is right up in the Hudson Valley. He says, these are not the best of times, but they're the only times I've ever known. So we've got to ride on that. We've got to know that we're going to be smarter, we're going to get better, and we got a lot of heartache, but we'll get through, and we keep our families and our friends and communities safe.
As usual, I can't beat that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Gregory. Thank you.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you for all your great work.